Teach Jam fam, we're back with another episode of Jam Talk. And of course, our commitment to you is to bring you the best, the brightest, the smartest, and the most experienced in urban education so that you can get smarter and wiser about your practice. So today, we have education titan in the building. Someone who's going to really educate me and our community about how we can move forward in urban education. So without further ado, introduce you to Kaya Henderson. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. So let's jump right in.
Okay.
And, this is, Teach Jam is not about being politically correct. We push ourselves for our community to really give principals, teachers, real answers, and district leaders. So it's great to have you. Can you tell, for those who don't know, who you are, what you're doing, what you've done, so we can set the stage?
So my name is Kaya Henderson. I am a 30-plus year educator. And most people know me for my time serving as Chancellor of DC Public Schools, maybe the best job I ever had, where when I got there, we were the lowest performing urban school district in the country. When I left, we were the fastest improving. I now am a technology entrepreneur, I guess. I run a curriculum and technology company called Reconstruction, where we teach African-American history and culture online to young people. We also have created tools to help teachers actually create more culturally responsive lessons. And so I get to teach unapologetically Black stuff to kids and teachers all day, every day.
Wow. Okay, so let's get into it.
Let's go.
Your take on the state of education and where we need to improve faster.
Yeah, so I am sad. Usually I'm an eternal optimist. I walk on the sunny side of the street, but I'm really, really depressed about where we are in education today. I feel like we missed a huge opportunity during the pandemic to really blow the walls off and do something very different. We were so busy trying to just get back to what we previously had been doing because it felt safe and comfortable. But that wasn't working for kids. It wasn't working for the kids that are most important to me, poor kids, kids of color. We lack imagination. We don't believe in our young people. We're not co-creating solutions with kids and families. Like, there is a way out of the educational slump that we're in. It's not going to come from the Department of Education. It's not going to come from policymakers. It's not even going to come from superintendents. It really is going to come from what the people say they need in education and our ability to respond to that and to be partners with them. I was sharing on the stage this morning that I saw this certificate of completion for a classroom today, and it said, this little boy has completed this class to his satisfaction and mine. And then it was signed by the teacher. And that was so powerful to me because it makes the teacher and the learner co-responsible for what happens in this classroom, right? Not, Travis successfully completed the third grade, signed Miss Henderson. It was Travis and Miss Henderson, have decided that we accomplished what we were supposed to accomplish. When you're in co-creation or collaboration with your learners, with your families, with your community, you just make different decisions. You do things differently, right? And I think there were heroic efforts during the pandemic where teachers and principals were doing all kinds of things differently, doing things going above and beyond, working really with communities in meaningful ways. And as soon as we got back inside, we just went back to, business as usual. I watched the nonprofit community rise up and meet the needs of kids and families and work with schools in ways that they had never been able to before. And as soon as we got back to normal, we were like, thanks so much. See you in the after school time space, right? We have to reinvent the way we do education. We have to reinvent the teacher job. Like, we were talking about teacher attrition earlier, and people don't want to do this job. It's hard. We haven't redesigned the job to make it more doable. And so why are we surprised that teachers are leaving? This is the most important profession in the world, and we have not appropriately thought about how to do things differently. There's a way to do it with other people. And I think that is the thing that is making me worried. If we don't move to a different way of operating, I think we're not going to get out of this.
Thank you for sharing that. So
let me add one thing to that. There are people who are I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. There are people who are using this opportunity to dismantle public education. If you look at what the right is doing, from book banning to educational savings accounts, right, where basically you get government money, you can take that wherever you want to go. There was a huge move in this country to take government money and fund Christian fundamentalist schools, to take kids out of diverse settings and put them in siloed settings. And the people who are going to lose, right? Wealthy people know how to negotiate and navigate these systems. The people who are going to lose the most are our kids.
So thank you for sharing that. Now, we hear a lot, the system wasn't designed for us. And I hear that, right? And so the outcomes we get, we're supposed to get because the system wasn't designed for us. Can you give me your take on that? And then, so how do we beat the system or change the system?
So I think there are two things. One is, what do we do with the system that we have? Because, right, the second is not going away. And I do think that we can exercise our leadership and our power to change things. It's important for people like us to be in leadership, right? When I was at DC Public Schools, predominantly Black districts, 72% Black, 12% Latino, right? And people were literally like playing the funeral music for DC Public Schools. For 40 years, we had declining enrollment, declining test scores, declining graduation rates, every indicator. It was just terrible, terrible, terrible. Add to that an aggressive charter sector that was actually designed to eclipse the traditional public school system. People talked about DC being New Orleans without the storm, where we were going to go to an all-charter system because nobody ever expected the traditional public school system to get better. And my thing was, well, I didn't come here to preside over a dead body. We gonna bring this joker back to life. And the way I did it, or the way I thought about it, was I'm gonna treat poor Black kids the way we treat wealthy white kids, right? If wealthy white kids are struggling if they're struggling readers, you don't say you can't go to piano lessons, you got to stop playing lacrosse, you can't go on the family trip, you can't go to the museum on Saturdays. We get them a tutor, and we do all of those other things, right? When poor kids of color are struggling readers, we strip all of those things away,
Just
right?
read all day.
Drill and kill, block schedule, blah, blah. Are you kidding me? Like, the only reason kids will learn to read and do math because they want to do the other things that are at school. And so we did everything from reestablishing, art, music, PE, foreign language, technology into what kids were learning every day, every week, requiring field trips, requiring student activities, requiring, 30 AP classes. Like, I'm going to make this like a fat, wealthy school where kids have lots of opportunities, where I'm developing their talents in addition to their test scores, right? Because we can do these things. We do it every day for other people's children. And so let's start treating poor Black children like we treat rich white children. And guess what happened? Study abroad, they flipped out when I started the first study abroad program at scale, right? In lots of places, the high school teacher is going to raise money and send. I was like, no, the district is going to pay. We had 800 kids going abroad every year. Senegal, China, blah, blah. We paid for everything. We paid for the trip. We paid for the passports. We had to buy kids suitcases and underwear in some cases so that they could go. Those are life-changing experiences. And there were people who said to me, those kids don't need that. What do you mean those kids don't need that? If your kids need that, then these kids need that, right? And so with the system that we have, if we stop thinking about these kids from a deficit perspective and start treating them like rich white kids, they'll be fine, absolutely fine. Then I think we also have to imagine something completely different, right? I started my company, Reconstruction, because government schools are never going to teach Black history the way I want to teach Black history. People who don't believe in Black people can't teach Black history. So I don't want to put this it's not crazy. Are you teaching at Hebrew school? No. You're not teaching at Korean school neither. Why? Because you don't know that? You don't people who love Black children have to teach Black history and Black culture if we are going to empower our young people to see themselves differently in school and in life. And so I wanted to control it all. I wanted to decide what was being taught, who was teaching, how long I spent. I didn't want to be relegated to February or 45 minutes every once in a blue moon. I get to teach as much as I want for as long as I want, whether it's Black Shakespeare, which is an award-winning curriculum that, we won the American Shakespeare Association Award for this curriculum that we did around 5 Shakespearean plays from a Black perspective. It hits different for kids when your first encounter with Shakespeare is about Blackness, right? To the history of hair braiding, to, pre-AP world history, which takes the AP conceptual framework, and instead of applying it to, Western civilization, it applies it to the history of Africa. Our kids need to see themselves differently. And so I get to teach that. And we have a tradition of creating our own institutions to teach our own children. And I think that is the real revolution. We got to start teaching ourselves and doing it on our own terms.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. If you can speak to principals, because as more than ever before, a lot of principals do look like us. But the schools are still coming out with the outcomes of before, when so many schools didn't have principals that look like us. So what wisdom, advice can you give to urban leaders who look like us around daring or being bold enough to transform their schools? Like, what are those steps they need to take?
I think that the principalship is literally the most transformative role in a system of schools. The principal is the linchpin between what's happening in classrooms and community and what's happening with resource allocation. And I think it's the hardest job. And I think that, number one, everybody who is a principal should not be a principal. We are quick to promote people, especially brothers. And some of them are well-equipped and some of them are not. Some of them are good disciplinarians, but they're not actually visionaries, or they don't know how to manage people to transformation. I'm going to say it. You said...
Can we slow back?
I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you.
Say that again, please.
It's true. Not everybody who is a principal should be a principal. It is an incredibly difficult job. I don't think we actually train people the right way to be principals. These ed admin degrees are trash. I don't know what they teach in these programs, but we started a program at Georgetown University that basically is an MBA sort of light, an executive master's in leadership, because I was like, these principals are CEOs and they need to be taught the way we teach CEOs to manage people resources, other material resources, to manage community politics, da-da-da-da. If we're training business people that way, why aren't we training principals that way? And so I do think that, one, we got to get right how we prepare principals. Two, we got to make sure that we are actually selecting the most appropriate people. And then three, principals have got to be in a place where, like, the principal job is hard. You go every day and just thug it out, right? Or you could be in a place where you're learning, where you're growing, where you have a community that is pouring into you so that you can lead your people appropriately. You don't get no awards for just slogging through a school year. If you're a great principal, it's because you're inspirational. It's because you're learning. It's because you have a team of people who you can rely on to do the job with you. And I think we have pathologized like the individualness of the principal the same way we have the individual Superman teacher, right? That's not how it works. That's not how we do these jobs well. And so I think principals also need to be cared for and fed so that they can actually pour out and lead the way they need to lead. But first, make sure you got the right people.
Thank you. And I know you mentioned the brothers.
Yeah, there's some sisters out here.
But you said brothers for what?
Because I think we are predisposed. I don't think it comes from a bad place. I think that we appreciate Black male leadership. I think it's especially critical for our young men to see Black males in leadership positions. But I call it Black Boy Sparkle. I've seen so many Black men who were promoted before their time. And that is a problem for everybody. It's really a problem for that Black man because he feels inadequate if he is, and he's trying to do what he is supposed to do every day. But if we promoted him too early or we didn't give him the appropriate training, he's not going to be successful for himself or for the people that he's leading.
Right. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. So, last question. And you threw me for a loop with that. I know you was good, but you're keeping it real. Last question. We have a lot of educators, as we've been told, leaving the system. Lots. So teacher attrition is a hot topic in education, and it's just not a topic. It's happening. It's real. On a district leader level, what are school districts or just education in general? What are we missing about that in terms of what are we missing, and then what should we do? Whether it's a district leader, superintendent, principal, how do we reverse that? Because it's sad that we keep saying it, right? But what are we missing, and what do you think we're missing there, and what can we do to kind of reverse that and get people back in?
So when I was at DC Public Schools, we were the lowest paying jurisdiction in our area. We also hired the latest, which means we were guaranteed to get everybody who could not get a job anywhere else. I fundamentally believe that any organization is only as good as its people. And so if we were going to be the best school district, we had to get the best people. In order to get the best people, we had to pay something very different. And so when I got there, the starting teacher salary was $35,000 a year. Yeah, right? That's wild. And we were able to negotiate a contract with the teachers union that made that first year salary $55,000. Now this was, 20 years ago, not 20 years ago, but about 15 years ago. And we created a pay for performance system where teachers were able to get bonuses of up to $25,000 a year if they achieved their goals. In fact, just this morning, I met a young lady who is a teacher at DC Public Schools. She started teaching way after I left, but she was like, thank you. She was like, my job is hard, but the pay is good. I also wanted to make sure that these teachers didn't have to, work at Macy's in the evening, that they could buy a house in the community that they live in, right? Like people can't do this job and not be able to live, right? And so fixing pay was one thing. Recognizing teachers, giving them leadership opportunities, right? Everybody wants to be better, do better, grow, learn, lead. I think giving teachers leadership opportunities, we do that kind of janky in the education space. We're like, you are so good, Travis. We're going to promote you to the dean and you make the same amount of money, but now you're doing two jobs and not one. No, give people leadership opportunities, lighten the rest of their load, right? I mean, there's a little thing called strategic scheduling, right? There are ways that you could actually change the school day around so that people are not teaching for 7 periods with one prep. There are ways that a certificated employee does not have to be the only person standing in front of young people. There are people in the community who can teach different things. Do we need a certified teacher to do every single thing? No. Let's break this thing open and reimagine what the day could look like if some portion of the day were electives that were taught by people in the community or were taught by adjunct professors, people who only teach half time. Like, there are so many ways we've reinvented work in this country, especially over the last 5 years, right? Nobody works the way they used to work, except for teachers and principals, right? Same thing. We can actually be imaginative and make the job doable, make the job, pay well. And I think we've just, I think it's easy to say the union contract won't let me do it. Well, then bust up the union contract. Like, we busted up for other things that are important to us. When things are important to you, you do them. But it's also why we have to have courageous and bold leaders, why people like us have to lead. There are so many of us who are afraid of the superintendency or afraid of the principalship or whatever. The only way we're going to get to some new things is if some new people are leading this stuff. And they are unapologetic and unafraid to do what we know is good and right for people. My challenge for you is, what are you doing at Pharos to change things around and make things easier for your teachers? Every single one of us has the opportunity to do something a little bit differently. That once you do that something, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And you could do the next something, next time it's a whole different ballgame.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. and sharing with our community. Teach Jam fam, the wonderful, the magnificent Kaya Henderson, Education Titan. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
There you go, Teach Jam fam. We'll see you next time. We're out.